Number 10. Bailey's final meal. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning.
No.
For a prequel, The Beginning is viciously brutal in how it kills off its victims, as we'll see a few more times later on. However, we'll start with this lethal yet simple death. Chrissy and Bailey find themselves the remaining two in their small group. Whereas Chrissy is still putting up a fight, Bailey has mentally left and accepted her fate. For Chrissy's poor manners at the dinner table, the Hewitts order Leatherface to end Bailey's suffering. We can still hear Mama Hewitt's haunting line before Bailey's death.
Set her free, child.
Number 9. A sudden end. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wait. I thought I heard something.
For much of the original Texas Chainsaw movie, we were wondering if the annoying Franklin was ever going to make it out alive. Boy, were we wrong. But not as wrong as they were for exploring the dark Texas woods late into the night. As he and Sally search for their missing and totally not dead yet friends, Franklin hears a noise close by.
Sally, I hear something. Stop. Stop.
Sure enough, Leatherface has come by for a friendly and grisly hello. Trusty chainsaw at the ready. Honestly, we're just going to pin this one on Sally for not stopping. Why didn't you listen, girl? Number 8. Salt and Leather. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Admittedly, this death makes the list not just for the brutality, but for what follows. Leatherface has got our two leading ladies trapped in a van, or so he thinks. Pepper manages to squeeze past him, but unfortunately gets chipped in the back by our maniac. Though her death happens off-screen, one can imagine the ghastly aftermath. Adding to the horror is the reveal of Leatherface's newest mask, a look that will forever haunt our darling Erin. Really, that's a shot no Texas Chainsaw fan could ever forget after their first viewing. Number 7. Chrissy and Eric's last moment. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning.
No.
I can't feel it. Did he cut it off? I can't feel it.
The beginning certainly had its own wealth of brutal ends, as its 2003 predecessor did. One scene in particular left us in a bit of shock. In this scene, Chrissy tries desperately to free her boyfriend Eric, who is strapped to Leatherface's table. Unfortunately, she is unable to before our chainsaw-wielding psychopath heads downstairs. Chrissy hides under the table as she is forced to witness her boyfriend's death from below. How Leatherface didn't catch her afterwards is beyond us, but he had to have had some clue if he went and offed Eric that quickly. Number 6. Two birds, one saw. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yo, it's 8:11 Texas time on a Friday night. I know nobody's listening because y'all are all zooming, but I got a shot of hot rock and roll for you anyway.
If you're wondering how a Texas Chainsaw movie could open up in the most 80s fashion imaginable, well, you probably haven't seen the first sequel. And you should. It's hilarious, as evident by this early set of on-screen deaths. Two reckless teens are ambushed by Jed and the Sawyers. After a few moments of whatever the hell this is, Jed whips out the trusty chainsaw and takes out the driver. The car veers off and crashes, ending the other teen. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw 2 is very much the Jason Takes Manhattan of the franchise. Number 5. Ground beef. Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Look who's back.
That's right. Do your thing, cuz.
In all honesty, Texas Chainsaw 3D featured some questionable scenes. But as far as the deaths went, there were a couple of good ones. One of them occurs towards the end, where Mayor Bert Hartman gets a cold serving of revenge. Leatherface toys with his victim by lunging his chainsaw around Bert's hands, eventually forcing him to hand off the ledge of a rather large meat grinder. Old Jed gives him a hand, or two, and sends old Bert sliding down into the metallic teeth below. A ghastly end for a ghastly character. Number 4. Always check the back seat. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning. Considering The Beginning was a prequel movie, we all had some idea of how it was going to end, with no one left alive. Still, there was some hope in us that believed Chrissy would make it out. We couldn't be further from the truth. Just as she spots a cop and bystander, Leatherface pops up from the back seat. Chrissy meets an untimely end, and her loss of control results in the deaths of both the cop and the bystander. We're simply left in shock as Jed lugs on back home in the darkness. Number 3. 100% Hal. Leatherface. This 2017 prequel kept us in suspense as we waited for the Jed we know to take form. Sure enough, his first victim was as brutal as we anticipated. With Hal as their captive, the Sawyers are finally able to exact their revenge, and it's time for Jed to live up to the family name. Broken and angry beyond repair, Jed torments Hal before making up a bit of ground beef of his own.
Jason, don't do it!
You shut up over there. You're next. You hear me?
Visceral? Absolutely, but a little too much for YouTube's liking. But those who have seen this flick know it's one of the best deaths in the franchise. Number 2. Emphasis on the chainsaw bit. Texas Chainsaw 3D. Speaking of, this next one might be a little tough to show. By this point, Jed had already claimed his first victim, and he's ready for another. Kenny is ambushed by Jed while preparing dinner, and is soon hooked in Jed's basement. Later on, Heather finds Kenny right before being discovered by Jed. Just as she escapes, Jed briefly turns his focus onto Kenny, and reminds us why this franchise is called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is not a pretty sight, but it certainly makes for a morbid spectacle. Number 1. Jed's first victim. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Anybody home?
Another death from the 1974 original that most fans will remember is Pam's hooking. But for the top spot, there just isn't a better way to go out than Jed's first on-screen target. You just can't forget those eerie shots of Kirk and the Sawyer house as he slowly figures out what events transpired before his arrival. And cue our cannibalistic maniac. It all happens so suddenly that the viewer barely has any time to process what's going on before it's over. It's haunting, it's brutal, and the scene has managed to ingrain itself into every Texas Chainsaw fan's skull. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.